رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. صلوات. The topic of racism is a very important topic that is prevalent in the world today. Every corner of the world you look, racism exists. Whether you look in Canada, whether you look in Australia, whether you look in Europe, whether you look in the Middle East, racism, unfortunately, is a problem that many face from a global point of view. Racism has a contemporary and a historical side to it as well. Historical in the sense that throughout history, many people have been affected by racism. Throughout the dawn of humankind, people have been subject to racism in one way or another. Contemporary in the sense that even today, like I said, it is still a problem within our society, racism. Sometimes we might not be aware of it, or we may not necessarily intentionally mean it, but the way we act or the way we say certain things to our friends at school, whether you're in high school or you're in primary school, it may be racist. They may not take it as a racist thing, but theoretically it might be racist. Or you might not mean it to be racist, but they take it as something as slandering or racist. So racism is something when you mistreat someone based on their race, their ethnicity, their color of their skin, and that kind of thing. I'm sure you would have learned about racial discrimination in school, inshallah. So when we look in academic circles, the topic of racism or the problem of racism is something that's discussed everywhere in the world today. If you look at school, you have campaigns which look at racism, that you're not allowed to call people certain names, you're not allowed to, for example, be a bully in the environment, you have to be respectful of people's color of skin, you have to be like this and you have to be like that. And then in a larger or a more later stage in life, you go to university, you will work on assignments based on bullying or racism. So you'll be working with racism throughout your life, which is why this topic is very important. When you grow up and you start beginning to work in the workplace, you will also need to be understanding that my fellow worker who is working with me, I need to treat them with respect. I cannot be a racist person towards them. I cannot treat them unfairly. This is why the topic of racism is important. But the unfortunate thing is that very little do we have in circles where people discuss the point of view of Islam on racism. Many people, when you talk about racism, it's just general. You're talking with Westerners, you're talking with non-Muslims. But within ourselves, let's look about it. What is our religion saying to us about racism? What does Islam say about racism? So tonight, inshallah, we'll look at what Islam pinpoints on what we call racism. Before we get into Islamic perspective, first you look at sociological circles. If you look at society from a sociological point of view, and if I was to simplify it, means in general interactions with people, there are a couple of types of racism. A few types. And I want you to hear and listen carefully to which type of racism you think you might be applying. Because in one way or another, we are all racist. Why? We may not necessarily mean it, but we are. Whether it's our thought, whether it's our action. So these are the types of racism. The first type of racism is what we call pre-reflective gut racism. It's a very big word. But what that basically means is someone new walks into your group and you begin to give that person eyes. As in, who's this guy? He doesn't belong here. He's not one of us. Clearly, my color of my skin is different to this guy. So the moment you see this guy, you're like, oh, it's us and him. It's a complete divide between me and this new person. This is what you call pre-reflective gut racism, because you become emotional. You don't use your mind. Automatically, you see someone, you're like, this guy is something different. It's based on your emotion, not based on your thinking and your rationality. The second type is post-reflective. This is pre-reflective. The second type is post-reflective gut racism. What does this mean? This means that, look, you understand that there are other races and other differences, but you take pride in your own race. At one point or another, I can guarantee you would have felt like this in your life, where you look at somebody and you say, look, this is from another country, but my race, I am an Afghani, automatically I'm better than this guy. Why? Because I'm an Afghani, and if I identify with that race, automatically I have to be better. So this is what we call post-reflective gut racism, where now you think your race is better than others. In the World War II, Hitler's army, or Hitler, what he did was he put forward a certain idea where he said you have they call it the Aryan supremacy, which means that anybody who had blonde hair and blue eyes, they were pure race. Anybody else who didn't have it, you were dirty, you were filthy, you were seen as something low. So this is what we call post-reflective gut racism. The third type of racism is what we call cultural racism. Cultural racism is where you say, you know what, my culture is better than others. You can be proud of your culture, there's nothing wrong with it. But the moment you think your culture is better than others, this is where you've entered. Why? Because now you're thinking at others, you're like, look how backwards they are. Look how fanatical they are. Look how barbaric they are. They are a bunch of people from the jungle. This is what you think. Because you think that your culture or your race is better than the others. Sometimes we might be at home, at dinner with our mum and dads. Maybe our dads might say it. Yes, it's not their intention, but it's something automatic. Like these Angres people, look at them, they do all these sorts of stuff. Wow, what kind of barbaric people. But like I said, it's a subtle type of racism. You don't mean it, but it's there. This is what we call cultural racism. And the final one, or second final one, sorry, is institutional racism. This one's a very important one, because I guarantee you, either you will see someone in your life who goes through this, or yourself will go through this. What is institutional racism? Institutional racism is that the system is built in a way where certain races can't make it to the top. If you look at the darker generation or the darker races, whether you think Aboriginal, whether you think African, whether you think these people, the system unfortunately has built it in such a way where these people are not given equal opportunities to a white man. Sometimes we apply for jobs. And sometimes don't you think that, you know what, I didn't get hired because somebody named Harry, somebody named Josh got the job before me because he's got a white guy name? This is what we call institutional racism. As one famous US athlete used to say, that when he was black, this athlete, he used to say that when they wanted us to entertain them, they would support us. When they wanted us to win gold medals for the country, they'd support us. But the moment we wanted jobs in the corporate world, they said you're not enough for that. Athletes, yes, black Americans, great athletes. NBA, sprinting, Olympics, great swimmers. They said if they wanted to win gold medals for us, we were there. But the moment we want jobs and proper growth for ourselves and our community, they said this is not for you. I think you better stick to your place. This is what we call cultural racism. And the final one is paternalistic racism. It's a big word, so I'll try to simplify it. It basically means is that you think your race is the father of all races. There are other races and you have the father, yes? Which means that you act like you're the father of all races. You say, look, I'm like your father, and I'll tell you what's right and what's wrong. You don't tell me what's right and wrong, because I am your father. Therefore, whatever I say goes. One example is European colonialism. When the Europeans, they colonized certain countries, they had a concept called white man's burden, which means we, the white man, will come to the country. We are civilized people. These people whose country we're taking, they're not civilized. They're people who are fanatic. Remember I said barbaric, and we are helping them when we colonize them. We are giving them Christianity, because most European colonialism was through Christianity. And then, of course, it's like we're going to teach them English because English is the language at that time. And then, obviously, they'd say that because we're civilized, we're trying to make this group of uncivilized people civilized. So this is what we call paternalistic racism. Then the question comes, well, what about Islam? What does Islam say about racism? Because these examples that I gave, they were sociological concepts, which everybody could relate to. But as a Muslim, what happens? Did Rasulullah go through these problems, as in during his prophethood? Did he face such challenges? In the time of Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance, let's say pre-Islamic Arabia, racism was a huge thing. If you weren't an Arab or you didn't have Arab features, automatically you were seen below. If you were black, you were treated as a servant. If you were non-Arab, automatically you were seen as someone who is lower. I remember Ammar bin Yasir, I think I talked about him a couple of nights ago. Ammar bin Yasir was called Ibn Sauda, which means the son of the black woman. And it was a derogatory term. They tried to stab it. It was a really nasty thing to say. They called him Ibn Sauda, the son of the black woman. Because they realized, look, your mother is from African descent. And at that time, the black or the darker complexion was seen as lower. So to stab someone, you say you're the son of a black woman. So did Rasulullah try to address this? Of course it did. Of course it did. The Quran comes with a beautiful ayah. And this is the ayah I quoted at the start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Hujurat. Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa unsa. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّا أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. O mankind, we have created you from male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you get to know one another. The greatest amongst you in the eyes of God is the one who has taqwa, the one who is God conscious. Did the Quran say the greatest amongst you is the Afghani? Did the Quran say the greatest amongst you is the Arab? Did the Quran say the greatest amongst you is the one who is from Hindustan? Did the Quran say the greatest amongst you is the one from Lebanon? No. The Quran said those who are greatest in the eyes of God is those who have taqwa, God consciousness, or piety. So now, when we look at Rasulullah, did he truly go through? Yes. One day, a man by the name of Juwaybir comes to see Rasulullah. He's a companion. This is a really, really interesting story, so please pay attention. Juwaybir comes to Rasulullah. Juwaybir had a dark complexion. He was dark-skinned. He comes to Rasulullah, and Rasulullah says to him, Juwaybir, why don't you get married? You're at the age of getting married. Why don't you get married? He looks at him and says, Ya Rasulullah, who's going to marry me? Number one, I'm weak. Number two, I have a darker complexion. So who's going to marry me? So Rasulullah gives him a suggestion. He says, go ask the daughter of Ziyad bin Lubayt. Go ask him and say that Rasulullah has sent you and you've sent a proposal to his daughter. No problem. Juwaybir goes. When Juwaybir arrives at Ziyad's house, Ziyad is in a gathering. It's a public space. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. I have a message from Rasulullah. Ziyad says, welcome. If it's a message from the messenger of God, please. Juwaybir says, do you want me to say it to you in private or in public? Ziyad says, look, if it's a message from the Prophet of God, then make it public so everybody can hear it. He says, I have been sent by the Holy Prophet to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. The narration says, Ziyad bin Lubayd's complexion changed. He said, are you sure? He said, yes. He says, but he couldn't say it. He said, you're black. He said, you're black. We are Arabs. You are not an Arab. And you know that we, the Ansar, will only give our daughters to people who are of our own tribe. Now, Juwaybir was saddened by this. He truly was. He said, very well, if this is your answer, then it's your answer. Before he leaves, Ziyad says, wait. You said this message is from Rasulullah? He said, yes. He said, very well. I will go discuss with him. Out of respect for the Prophet, I will go discuss this with him. He goes to Rasulullah and he says, Ya Rasulullah, did you send Juwaybir? He said, yes, I did. He said, but Rasulullah, he couldn't say it in the presence of the Prophet. The Prophet said, say it. Why are you shy? He said, but he's black. Rasulullah said, so what? Oh Ziyad, did the Quran not teach us that we all come from male and female? جَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلِ لِتَعَارَفُوا, so that we get to know one another, and we are all children of Adam. Are we not the same? And the greatest one in the eyes of Allah is the one who has taqwa. When he hears, Ziyad says, you know what, Rasulullah, you're right, forgive me. I have committed a mistake. You know what, I will go ask my daughter, and if she's happy with this marriage, then I accept. She goes and he goes and he asks his daughter, and he says, Juwaybir has come to ask for your hand. But when he says Juwaybir, he hesitates. So the daughter says, why did you hesitate? He says, because he's not from us. The daughter says, did not the Prophet tell you that it doesn't matter what race or tribe is from so long as he has taqwa? So no doubt Rasulullah definitely went through this problem of racism. There's a myth that is told, and this is something indirect. Sometimes we don't think about this, but this is something that we grow up throughout our life as children in a Western country. What happens is you get told or slowly learn that the Europeans are civilized and the Middle Easterns are backward. Please listen carefully. This is what you get told. Either subtly or directly. You will get told that the Europeans or the whites are civilized, and those who are not Western, they are backwards. And this is a myth because until recently, some of these European countries or Western countries, racism was quite prevalent. And one of the greatest examples is one by the name of Cassius Clay. But before we get to Cassius Clay, let's look at how backwards the Middle East is. Yes? Because if we are truly trying to understand our racism because of how civilized Europe is, then let's look at Middle East in the 7th century, or the 8th century, or the 9th century. The first university that was ever established was by a Muslim woman. Your greatest scientists in the Muslim world were earlier than the greatest scientists in the Western world. Jabir bin Hayyan is a scientist. His Latinized name is Jiba. If you see in Europe, you'll see bits of his works. They've Latinized his name to Jiba. In the field of chemistry, Jabir bin Hayyan is up there. For example, you have another Al-Khawarizmi, those who learn maths at school. You've got algebra, don't you? Yes? You will learn algebra. Algebra comes where? From who? Al-Khawarizmi. An Arab polymath, a Muslim. So where is the Middle East fanatical, backwards? Number 3, your greatest scholar, your greatest scientist, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he had so many students in his university. So this understanding where Europeans are civilized and the Middle Easterns are backwards is not true. Like I said, one of the greatest examples in America in the early 1900s or mid-1900s was Cassius Clay. Those of you who are paying attention, I want to ask you, who knows who Cassius Clay is? Can anyone tell me? Good. Cassius Clay. If you don't know, I'll give you a clue. Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That might help you. Yes? Muhammad Ali, his initial name was Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay was his white name. When he converted to Islam, he adopted the name Muhammad Ali. He's the greatest boxer you know it. Of course, you might say Mike Tyson, some of you, but it's okay. Muhammad Ali is up there. Did Muhammad Ali go through this racism? Of course he did. But Islam gave him liberation. Why? Because Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest activists of human rights. He says, one day I was talking to my mum as a child. He says, one day I was talking to my mum, Mum, why is it that everything that is good, or that I've been taught to be good, is white? Jesus Christ's images are white. The people at the Last Supper is white. The good cake is white and the dark cake is bad. Why is it that the angels in heaven are white? Where did the black angels go? So he says, I was a child. I used to ask these questions. Don't the black angels deserve a spot in heaven? And his mum would say, yes, they do. But he says, all I see is white angels according to wherever he went. He says, the president lives in a white house. Why is everything white? He used to think, he says, I used to think as a child, I was intrigued as to why everything was white. He says, then I saw the slight thing in racism. He says, the president lives in a white house. Santa Claus is white. Why can't Santa Claus be black? He says, every time that I said everything was evil, they would say it's black. The black cat, there's a superstition. The black cat brings bad luck. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. Yeah? Why is everything bad black? Muhammad Ali pointed this out. He said, the black cat is evil, for example, and then if I want to threaten you, I blackmail you. Why can't I whitemail you? The very language, there was a subtle bit of racism in there as well. He says, for example, I can't whitemail you, I have to blackmail you. Why is everything evil or bad black? But then you realize that through his conversion of Islam and his activism through human rights, he found liberty. He found liberty because he said, I'm no slave. The only slave I am is the slave of God. That's Muhammad Ali. And even within contemporary society, even in Australia, for those of you who study legal studies at school, legal studies, year 10, 11, 12, I'm 100% sure you will go through this case. 1990s, Eddie Mabo versus the state of Australia. For those of you who have studied legal studies, Eddie Mabo was an Aboriginal Australian who lived in the northern areas of Australia, Torres Strait Islanders. Yes, I'm sure you all know where Torres Strait Island is. He took one of the cases to court. He took the very own government and the state of Australia to court. A very bold move. He said because what the government had done was they took the land and they classified it as terra nullius. I'm not sure if you know what that means. Terra nullius basically means no man's land, which means that if this is no man's land, I can take it because it doesn't belong to anybody. So that's what the government did. Eddie Mabo said this is not right. This belongs to the people who are indigenous to the country. The Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islanders, it belongs to them. He took the case to court. The first time he took the case to court, he lost it. Because under the term terra nullius, he could not justify that this land was his. The second time he takes it to court, he reappeals. He reappeals to the High Court and eventually wins the case. But the reason why terra nullius was a racist idea is because A, it completely disacknowledged his right as a human being. Number two, his land was stolen unjustly from him. Imagine you're sitting at home. Somebody just comes and says, this is not yours. This belongs to anybody. So I'll just take it. What the Palestinian goes through right now is exactly this. Terra nullius, yes, no man's land. He says, look, this is nobody's land. Eddie Mabo, in the 1990s, he won this case. And he brought back the rights of that land to his very people. But the point is this, the point is the rights of people in the West only began in the early 1900s. Whereas Islam, you had much more people who gave rights and love to the people who are from different groups. Ahl al-Bayt stressed on showing love to people who are from different groups and tribes. You don't cocoon yourself because you're an Afghan, you only hang out with Afghans. And you think that you're only Afghan, everybody else is below you and you don't need to hang out with anyone. And I'll give you an example and I'll conclude with it, inshallah. Your greatest example is on the 10th of Muharram, a companion of Imam al-Hussein by the name of John bin Huway. John bin Huway was an African companion of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He was old, yes? On the day of Ashura, John bin Huway was very old. He comes to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, he says, Ya Abu Abdullah, my Mawla, allow me to go onto the battlefield to fight for you. Imam al-Hussein says, John, you have served us for so long, you have been so nice to us. You're old, you don't need to go fight. Don't fight. To which John says, Yabna Rasulallah, is it because you're not letting me because you don't want my blood to mix with your pure blood? What am I going to answer your mother Zahra when I meet her? That I saw your son lonely in the land of Karbala and I could not help him? I cannot face your mother. Abu Abdullah replied, listen John, you know that we Ahlul Bayt do not differentiate based on skin or color. Your blood is the same as my blood. So he makes a dua and he says, John, you are welcome to go. May Allah be with you. And I'll conclude with this. As John goes, he recites certain lines of poetry, which are beautiful lines of poetry. What does he say? He says, كيف ترى الكفار ضرب الأسود بالسيف ضربا عن بني محمد. And then he says, أضب عنهم باللسان واليد أرجو به الجنة يوم المورد. What does he say? He says, كيف ترى الكفار ضرب الأسود. How do the disbelievers? Remember what? The army of Yazid, according to the point of view of John bin Huway, are disbelievers. Why? Because they fought the Imam of their time. But they prayed. They fasted. They did everything. But they fought the Imam of their time. So to John bin Huway, those people on the other army are what? Kuffar, they're disbelievers. So he says, كيف ترى الكفار ضرب الأسود. How do the disbelievers see the strike of a black man? بالسيف ضربا عن بني محمد. I strike you with my sword on behalf of the family of Muhammad. أذب عنهم باللسان واليد. I have given my life to them with my tongue and my hands. And all I ask is for Jannah in return. And he went and he achieved martyrdom, which goes to show you that Ahlul Bayt does not discriminate based on the skin color, because they gave a companion like John bin Huway a chance. So this is, inshallah, a pretty good understanding I'm hoping I will put forward about what Islam is and what racism is and what the point of view is. May Allah give us a opportunity to better ourselves and not be prejudiced against people, so that the disease of racism gets removed from our heart. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.